Coming up next, of course, is another conversation that is also very important, and that's in regards to hybrid cloud models. And to talk about designing hybrid cloud strategy, please help me in welcoming MD Paix Data Center Kenya, Vincent Camadro.
Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. All right, so as the slides are coming on the screen, so Paix is probably a very new name for all of you, and the reason is simple, is we are a new data center that has opened its door only 6 months ago. So we are a data center located in Britam Tower in Upper Hill in Nairobi, and starting operating since April. So this is where I will stop for the sales speech, because today I want to share with you some more information about what is a typical journey that companies take to migrate to the cloud, and let's say the most common steps. So a bit of a high-level view on that. Some considerations also about why it makes sense to choose an hybrid cloud architecture, and also why it could make sense in some context to host this hybrid cloud in an interconnection hub like a data center, as opposed to a setup on-prem. And then also share the current situation on the cloud landscape in Kenya and in Africa in general. So almost there. Okay, that's fine. So I'll skip this introduction. So I mean, the starting point that all companies or where all companies were is an on-premise setup where a company has 100% control on the whole infrastructure, and that's a pretty broad scope, because you're at the same time managing some very technical things like generators, cooling systems, up to servers, up to operating system, applications, and their data. So it requires really a full spectrum of skills in your IT department and beyond. And one of the first steps that companies start the journey with is to move some of their infrastructure to a data center. So that's what we call the collocated model. And it's not it's usually a decision that is not taken at any point of time, but more frequently, for example, after an incident that took place on some of the infrastructure, like power or cooling, and where companies realize that maybe they didn't have the right skill set to let's say to cope with that kind of problems, or another common circumstance could be, the decision to renew or not some big infrastructure. When you have to buy some big generators or big cooling systems, and there are hundreds of thousands of dollars or more that you need to get approval from your board. This is maybe sometimes the moment where companies ask themselves, why not outsourcing that part and focusing on what is a bit more our core skills, like applications, hardware, etc. Okay, so that can be a first step. But then a second possible step is what we call this private cloud architecture. And this is really when a company starts to have a virtualized environment. So virtualized, in fact, is just optimizing the use of hardware, because most of the servers are usually underutilized. So then at some point, people realize that by virtualizing this hardware, it's a way to optimize the resource, the memory, the CPU, the storage. And that step of private cloud, of course, can be hosted in your building, on-prem, or in a data center. Okay? And then the next one is when this hybrid cloud comes, and that's when some aspects of a public cloud, like Google Cloud or Amazon or Microsoft Azure, starts to be used. So it can be, just a way to store some data. For example, when your storage equipment are full, so you want to scale and use it a bit more, or for backup or archiving, or maybe you have started to have some first applications that are web-based and that are cloud native, and you want this application to be integrated with the rest of your IT software, etc. All right? Then the next step is to start modernizing some of your legacy application and software, and so maybe rebuilding them so that they can take advantage of the public clouds, and especially the speed of computing the data and the easiness to scale and to adjust the workload of your applications to the real usage by the customers. So there are different ways to modernize applications through APIs that just allow your cloud applications to communicate and to be integrated with your legacy applications. But there are other technologies like containers, or even stop using servers at all and just use functions that are provided by the public cloud providers and that are going to execute the code that you are writing just whenever there is a demand, and when maybe the application is idle, then you are not charged anything. Okay, and then the possible end to that journey, in a way, is what we call the multi-cloud, which is not only using one public cloud providers, but several at the same time. And the objective of that is to take advantage of each strength of the different public providers. They are not offering exactly the same services, and in that case, this is when you have really optimized the tools that are available to a company. So, just going back to this hybrid cloud approach, which is in fact the approach that most companies used, because it offers really a flexibility and the best of both worlds between the private cloud and the public cloud. And what I'm showing here on this slide is just a few examples of the benefits of each architecture. So a private cloud, and we've talked about it in the previous panel, is very helpful to respect local regulation and compliance. There are many industries that ask their players to host their data in Kenya, or to host their customers' data in Kenya. So that's particularly true in the banking sector, but maybe also in other industries. And so companies have to comply, and they need to set up this private cloud. Another reason could be performance, because I will talk about that, but these public clouds are right now running in other countries than Kenya. So, for example, in South Africa, or in London, Amsterdam, Paris, etc. And sometimes, if you have critical applications that need to be, fast, the international connectivity between Kenya and these other countries is maybe not at the right level of stability. And so, for your critical workload, you might prefer to run it here in Kenya, where you have more control and less risk of outage or higher latency, etc. For example, between Kenya and South Africa, the time for the signal to travel through the optic fiber is 40 milliseconds, which is a very short time in absolute value, but for some applications, this can create an additional impact that some companies are not willing to add and want to and prefer to run it locally. Public cloud, at the opposite, can add a bunch of nice features, and especially around analytics, around artificial intelligence, machine learning. So for applications where, for example, you want to learn what works best to show in front of your customers, whether it's in e-commerce, for example, and you want to see if you present that type of product, what will be the outcome on sales, etc. There are models that are readily available in public cloud platforms that can help a lot to create value for the company and its customers. Compute power is another one. Of course, that's one of the strengths of these public clouds. They have thousands of servers. They are using the latest technology, and so if you need to increase the size of your CPU or the size of your data, that's one click away from you. And data storage also becomes very cheap and almost unlimited when you move to these platforms. So this hybrid cloud infrastructure, you can run it on-prem, you can run it in a data center. It would work the same way, but there are also a few advantages to be directly in an interconnection hub, which is most of the time a data center. So performance is another aspect. I've just mentioned sometimes the connectivity problems that we can have between Kenya and the rest of the world, but these connectivity problems are also very much present even within the country, for example, even within Nairobi or within Mombasa. And so you might have some backup links to connect to the internet, but these links are also prone to some performance issues or outages. And so locating your servers directly in an edge part of the internet is reducing this risk. The second aspect is community. The purpose of a data center is to host many people together so that it's easy to make business between the tenants of the data center, whether you want to connect to a wide array of connectivity providers, cloud providers, software as a service companies, internet exchanges, which are also nodes to exchange or to peer traffic very easily, or simply other corporates, maybe from your industry. Imagine, for example, a bank would share a lot of data transactions with other banks when they are RTGS transfers, for example. And then, of course, for some companies, a data center is a very convenient place to look for clients and to connect them at a reduced cost, because there's no setup cost anymore to install equipment at the customer's headquarters, for example. And then the cost element is the last one. It is a different approach. We are moving away from CapEx, so one-off investment, to move to OpEx, operational expenditure, and it's usually a cost-saving exercise for companies, mostly because it is more flexible. So you can decide, how much space you need in a data center, how much data storage you need in a cloud, how much compute power, and so you are able to optimize these different expenses as long as you control the usage. But for most companies, it is a winning exercise on the financial side as well. All right, so now I just wanted also to share a few information about the cloud in Africa and in Kenya. And so on these maps, I'm showing the three main cloud providers, Amazon Web Services, AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. And to show first that for the time being, the African continent has very little infrastructure, and especially when we talk about what these guys call regions, which are the full point of presence where all the features of these companies are available. These are the maps at the top. So Amazon and Microsoft have one region in Africa, and it's in South Africa. So Amazon is present in Cape Town, Microsoft in Cape Town and Johannesburg. So that's where most of the service is run, even for customers connecting to these companies from Kenya, because the region is really the large point of presence. But then each of these companies have some smaller setups. So Amazon called them CloudFront Edge, Google calls them Google Edge, and Microsoft Network POP, which is point of presence. And these smaller setups are already present in Kenya, whether it's in Nairobi or in Mombasa, in some data centers. And let's say it's a first step before Kenya will host the full array of services in the next years once the infrastructure will be in place. What you need to know is, for Google or Amazon or Microsoft to have a proper POP requires a lot of power and a lot of space in these data centers. And this infrastructure has started to be built in Mombasa, in Nairobi, and this will be really an enabler for these guys to finalize their business case and for them to come in Kenya and probably use this region to serve the whole of East Africa and the landlocked countries that are neighboring Kenya. So there are still a few or a limited range of services available directly in Kenya. So Amazon has a product called CloudFront Edge, which helps these content delivery networks to optimize the performance. So, it's not, it is not yet addressing the whole corporate needs, but it's already a start. Google Cloud has a number of partners that propose, dedicated links to London, to Amsterdam, to South Africa, to at least access public cloud features with a much higher performances. And there is a new product that is going to come in 2022 called Google Distributed Cloud Edge, which will be now bringing some more features either on-prem or in a data center, and without having to connect to Europe or South Africa. So this is also a step in the right direction. Microsoft also, it's possible to set up some smaller setup, but it will again be connected to South Africa. So, cloud might sound like still a long-term journey for Kenya, and it's true that really the full features will only be available in a few years. But there are some things that any company in Kenya can do to prepare themselves for this journey. So first of all, assessing your workload, assessing how ready you are to start this journey is something that you can do right now. You can do with the help of local expertise. There are many Kenyan companies that have a strong expertise in setting up private clouds, and they can assist in doing that. So the ecosystem is already quite rich. Or there are also some guidelines to do a self-assessment. So I mentioned one example, Google Cloud Adoption Framework. So if you want to run it in your company by yourself, there are also some tools provided by public cloud providers. So workload is one thing. Connectivity requirements can also be assessed in advance. Whether or not you can do multi-homing, that's the use of several internet service providers at the same time with a real-time routing. Whether it makes sense for you to connect directly to an internet exchange. Are you peering a lot of data within Kenya, within your industry? In that case, that could make sense. And also, look at the different options of collocation, whether in Nairobi or Mombasa. And last but not least, if you want to pay us a visit and have a coffee and visit the data center in Britam Tower in Upper Hill, you're also most welcome. So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon in Upper Hill.